Hello and welcome to the Asian Game. I'm your host, Scott McIntyre in Japan, and with the 18th AFC Asian Cup now just over 24 hours away, we continue our preview series by taking a look at Group E, featuring South Korea, Korea Republic, Malaysia, Jordan, and Bahrain. Joining me as always are my regular co-hosts, Michael Church in Hong Kong and Paul Williams in Adelaide. And we've got another special guest with us today, great friend of the pod who's woken up at some ungodly hour in Los Angeles, not as ungodly as it could have been, though, as we were discussing in the green room. To join us today, Steve Hahn. Steve, welcome back to the show, and thanks for joining us.
Hey, Scott. How's it going? Long time. I think it's been about a year since I've last been on. Yeah, always good to be on. Although Paul Williams here, trying to drag me out of bed at 3 a.m. on Saturday, guys. Can you believe that? This guy is savage. But yeah, I had to kindly turn that down and asked him if we can do it on a Friday, and he made it happen for me.
There you go. Peek behind the curtain. Another peek behind the curtain is the gentleman we're about to discuss lives in the same city as you. You were saying not so far away. Maybe you can go wake him up at 4 o'clock in the morning. That, of course, is Jurgen Klinsmann, a massive tournament for Korea, as we'll get onto as well. But is this a kind of make or break kind of tournament for Klinsmann? He came in with not the greatest of rapture in terms of some of the fan welcome, some of the media welcoming perhaps as well. How important personally is this for him? And we'll get into the bigger kind of picture stuff with Korea in a minute.
Yeah, no, I think he made it quite clear himself when he was speaking with the Korean media. Because I almost feel like a lot of the football writers in Korea are waiting for an opportunity to sort of attack him, if if that makes sense. And the questions that they've been repetitively asking him was, if you do not succeed at the Asian Cup, which to Korea, it's win or bust, honestly. If you do not win at the Asian Cup, would you be willing to step down? Those were the questions that we've been asking him. And his answer has always been, I mean, he never really gave a straight answer to that question, but his answer has always been absolutely, the Asian Cup will be the benchmark in terms of how you guys assess me. So I don't see any major injuries to any of the key players for Korea. All players are healthy. They're all in form, playing fantastic in top European competitions. So yeah, I definitely do not see any room for excuses for Korea to not pull it off this time around. Can they do it? Is obviously a more difficult question to answer because they haven't done it in 64 years. But yeah, that's the expectation, to go to the Asian Cup and to bring home the trophy. If they were to make it to the final and lose there, that would still be considered a disappointment, to be honest with you.
Well, I'll ask you then that question on Klinsmann. How bad would it have to be for him to A, either fall on his sword, or B, to have the sword stuck into him by the KFA?
Well, I think if he doesn't win the tournament, then I think everything will just open up for people to question. But to be honest, though, it certainly seemed that way. But in recent months, Korea did start to play a lot better, to be honest. I mean, that friendly against Tunisia was actually immensely impressive. I think it was actually more impressive than what people have given Korea credit for. Going into those games against Singapore and China, winning those games were to be expected. But for Korea to still go into China and score 3 goals there and win 3-0, that hasn't happened in a very long time. So that was a quite impressive result. So yeah, I think people have sort of.
Steve, as you said, it's been 64 long years. A lot's happened in the world of football. A lot's happened in the world generally. I think that was the first year that credit cards were actually introduced in my random research for this kind of thing. So that's how long it's been since since Korea's done well in the World Cup. In terms of the football fan support group, the population in Korea, what's the belief? What's the expectation? What's the hope? You said it's win or bust. Is that the general consensus amongst the football community?
Oh, there has never been. I mean, in the last 10 to 12 years or so, there has never been such a positivity around the Korean national team in recent history, at least. Um, I honestly don't quite remember the fans being this positive, perhaps since 2002, or I think the closest that I can compare this atmosphere to is probably 2010, 2011, around there when Park Ji-sung and Lee Young-pyo were at the towards the end of their career. The national team looked really strong at the time. And they actually came quite close to winning in 2011. I mean, that semifinal against Japan was an all-time classic, to be honest. I mean, it just the result just didn't go Korea's way, but so yeah, in the last 10 to 12 years or so, Korea has the general fans have never felt this positive about the national team. Whether they can win the tournament or not, we'll see because it's been so long since they've done it. But yeah, really. And I mean, this might sound like an excuse too, but for a lot of the fans, I've never seen so many fans actually taking the Asian Cup so seriously in Korea. So that's another thing. Like that's another added reason for Korea to really pull it off this time.
Just one from me, Steve. This almost certainly will be Son Heung-min's last Asian Cup. As you said, Korea haven't won it for 64 years. A lot of people say, not necessarily in that camp, but a lot of people say he needs to win a trophy at club or international level to be considered Korea's best ever players. Because players like Park Ji-sung, have got trophies from Manchester United. Is this tournament not just for the important for Korea to win it, but for Son, is this a real legacy defining moment for him? If he can deliver this title for South Korea, does he then go down as the best Korean player ever? How important is this tournament for him?
Yeah, no, I think I would agree with a lot of that. I mean, obviously, yeah, if he were to retire from the Korean national team without winning a trophy, I think his legacy would take a hit. But at the same time, how many Korean players have actually won a trophy with the national team? So if you look at it from that standpoint, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. But given the stature that he has, the statue that he has within the Korean national team, and the kind of profile that he has in the world, in world football, I think the expectation um is for him to at least have one trophy before he retires from the national team. But yeah, I always said though, when you look at Son Heung-min's national team career, he's never really had a landmark moment with the national team still. I mean, not sure. I mean, a lot of people do say that. I'm not sure if I agree with that 100% because when you go back to the World Cup a year ago, I mean, that run towards the end of that game against Portugal and that assist, which, that goal took Korea to the last 16. So that was a pretty significant moment. But, when we think of Son Heung-min, we think of goal scoring moments. And we haven't quite had that moment. He hasn't quite had that moment with the national team yet. I mean, there were moments when he came quite close, like that Asian Cup final in 2015, when he scored that dramatic equalizer towards the end of the game, but Korea couldn't quite pull off the result in that game, so it kind of diminished that, to be honest. So he's never really had that moment, and I think it's a big disappointment for him that he couldn't score in Qatar a year ago. So yeah, this tournament, he's he's in good form. He's at the pinnacle of his career. So yeah, definitely he's under pressure to deliver once again for sure.
How important do you think, Steve, it is for him to be involved from the start of the tournament? Because you mentioned 2019 Asian Cup, where he only came in for that final round group matches. The thought process being, of course, that Korea were going to get through, maybe balance his commitments and with Tottenham and Bento and the KFA were obviously playing the diplomatic game, which is completely understandable, but it looks like he's going to be there right from the start of the tournament. He will get acclimatized properly. He will get in. He will have the opportunity to bed himself in with the rest of the team at the same time. Do you think that that's a key factor?
Absolutely, and I think they learned their lesson, to be honest, the KFA from 4 years ago, because you know, Son Heung-min coming in the middle of the tournament, it just created a lot of chaos around the team too. Not just none of us really know what happened within the team, but it just created so much chaos in terms of your biggest star and the captain of the team, arriving at the tournament, in middle of the tournament. So I think they learned their lesson. There were rumors about how PSG tried to arrange something similar for Lee Kang-in, in terms of when he joins the national team for the Asian Cup, because just a few months ago he was at the Asian Games, playing there because that tournament is still very important for Korea, obviously. Um, But yeah, I think they learned their lesson, and I think Jurgen Klinsmann was really, really, really strict in terms of when he wanted his players to join. So yeah, like you said, Son Heung-min's gonna have 2 preparation going into Korea's first game. So yeah, I think that's a big factor. So like I said, that I go back once again to what I said earlier about there's just no room for excuses anymore.
Steve, I asked about Son Heung-min before, a player at the very opposite stage of his career. Kang-in, as you mentioned, they're right at the very start of his career. Kind of had a breakout World Cup last year because there was a lot of conjecture as to whether he was actually going to be involved in the squad or not. He was, and he had an impact when he played at the World Cup. 12, 13 months on, you look at what he's now doing at PSG. He's taken his game to the next level. Is this the tournament for him where he has that breakout tournament and he establishes himself now as the star going forward for the Korean national team?
I think so. I think so. I think if he were to have an average tournament or sort of a letdown of a tournament, I don't think the criticism would be too heavy, to be honest, just because he's such a popular figure with the national team right now. And I actually have no doubt in my mind that he's going to be a bigger star than Son Heung-min, years later, because that's how big of a star he is already in Korea. I mean, he was a reality TV star when he was 10 years old. So, when you look at it from that standpoint, it's no surprise that he's such a big star right now. Um, but yeah, I think this is also going to be a big tournament for him. And given his style of play, he's kind of sort of like evolved as a wide player. I think the expectation was from our side was for him to be like a prototypical number 10, but he's actually evolved into this winger, a dribbler almost. And I think Jurgen Klinsmann really likes those types of players that you can isolate on the wing and who can beat the opposing players off the dribble. And so we're going to see a lot of that. Paulo Bento was not a big fan of those kind of plays, to be honest. He preferred more of a ball sharing approach, whereas Jurgen Klinsmann, he actually likes players who thrives on running with the ball. I think in terms of the types of football that Klinsmann likes to play, that suits Lee Kang-in better. Whether that's better for Korea in terms of producing results, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, certainly things are looking a lot like brighter for him.